Hi, and welcome to the Stock Scores Market Minutes for May 28th, 2018. This week's topic, Know Your Edge, then the regular weekly market analysis, and finally, the trade of the week on SBUX. The market is a competition against millions of competitors. It's you against many, many thousands of people. In order to win in the market, you need an edge, something that will allow you to beat your competition. Now, why will you be the person who does better than the market return? Is it because you have a better strategy, better process, or perhaps better information? What is your edge? If you don't have an edge, then you need to find one, because to beat the market consistently, that's what you're going to need. Let's get into this week's analysis. First chart is of the S&P 500, 30-day, 60-minute chart, and we are in a little ascending triangle consolidation. Volatility has compressed. We had a lot of volatility, and now we're really in this compressed volatility pattern. We need to break out of this. Otherwise, we have to really do a hit and run trading style where we take quick profits because the market doesn't have any trend. Because the bottoms are rising on this chart, more than likely we will break to the upside, and that may happen Tuesday because overseas markets were trading well on Monday when the U.S. markets were closed. But until it happens, until we get a closing break above that resistance line, don't get too excited, but look for that early next week. Longer term chart, you can see that the long-term upward trend line is in place. We had that short-term pullback line, broke it. We've been trading with very narrow volatility, building a rising bottom, and that should lead to a continuation of the upward trend, at least up toward those highs from last January. On to the Russell 2000 market, which has been doing well of late as it moves to its all-time highs. You can see that we had the breakout of the pattern. Typical with breakouts, they break out, you get a pullback, and now I expect we will resume if we can break the pullback. It hasn't happened yet, but with the volatility so low last week, it's likely that we will get a resumption of the upward trend. Canadian market has been the strongest in North America of late, but it was time for it to give up some profits, and that's exactly what it did. Later in the week, you can see the trend went parabolic. We've pulled back to the trend line, actually went a little bit below it on Friday, but we'll see if we can hold early next week. Right now, that's where it's sitting, or early this week, I guess. And when you look at the weekly chart, you see why we got stuck. We had run up to resistance and basically stalled there, which is typical. I don't know that we're going to see a sharp sell-off from here. The market's just taking some profits after a pretty good run higher for the energy market, and you will see why there's been profit taking when we look at the energy charts. Onto the TSX Venture, which continues to be in this long-term pessimistic pattern, breaking through that little support zone at the upward trend line. That still has some horizontal support here, but generally you should be negative on this market because the tops are falling from left to right, and that is a sign that the sellers are in control. Onto the Treasury bond market, of course, when this goes up, interest rates go down, and we had a little rally in the bond market last week, and that is positive if you have to borrow money, because of course if this goes up, interest rates are going down. We have held support, which is good, and we've also broken that downward cycle, and even that longer term downward trend line has been broken. So that's an encouraging sign if you don't want interest rates to go higher. I don't think we're going to see a considerable rally from here, but we'll probably pull back first and then maybe try to make a rising bottom base and perhaps break that long-term pessimistic pattern that we have been in. On to the US dollar, which has been quite strong over the last month and a half. And of course, I'll review here. We broke the downward trend line, built a little rising bottom, broke the trend line. We've been moving up since. We've actually gone basically through that resistance level, which is good. I still think we might get a pullback this week because typically when markets rally into resistance, they get stuck at resistance. Hasn't happened yet, but let's watch for that this week. On to gold, which has been hurt by the rising US dollar because, of course, most people are buying gold in US dollars, and as the US dollar goes higher, it makes it more expensive if you are in another place other than the US. So you can see the pattern there is still an optimistic pattern. We've held the upward trend line, but in the short term, we've been selling off. Again, this is a weekly chart. So the last 5 or 6 weeks, we've been seeing weakness in gold, and that is a reason to stay clear of it. Although I have to say, I have seen a few gold stocks start to show better charts after really having ugly charts for some time. So It may be that the market believes that the price of gold will start to stabilize and that the gold stocks could be a place to bottom fish a little bit. I think you got to be pretty selective in doing that, but something to consider moving ahead. There's some selling pressure in the oil market. You can see we had some 2 or 3 days of selling pressure to end the week, and you might say, oh, it looks like the upward trend line is broken. Well, that's a very short-term upward trend line. We have to draw the longer-term one, and we are still holding above that. So we're kind of in a situation like we had over here where the market went parabolic, it pulled back, and then it resumed. I think we are going to take a breather in oil near term, and so if you're a short-term trader in oil stocks, you might take some profits here, but the longer-term trend is still up, so I don't have a reason to change my long-term view for oil. Fear chart, VXX, is continuing to move to local lows, although not all-time lows, but we are at local lows, and it does look like more likely to break lower prices because the bias in this chart is of falling tops, and that means the sellers are in control on the premiums in the S&P 500 futures options, which is basically how people buy insurance against corrections. So then, my ratings bullish on both time frames for U.S. stocks. It's been kind of a dead period as we have low volatility, but it does look like we could break out of that soon. Canadian stocks neutral long term as we are bumping up against resistance, but still a bullish trend short term. Gold neutral long term, bearish short term. We are in a little bit of a pullback mode. And oil bullish long term, but I've lowered my short term rating to neutral to factor in that weakness that we saw late last week. U.S. stocks should make a break from their low volatility pattern soon, most likely to the upside, but until it breaks out, don't count on that. Canadian stocks are stalling at resistance after a good run higher lately. Oil is seeing some profit taking, but the trend remains up. Gold trying, but it's fighting that strong U.S. dollar. Fear is moderate, and it does seem to be falling. All right, on to the trade of the week. There it is, a warm trade on SBUX. I bought it at the open there. And one of the things that the reasons I brought this up is because when you have a market coming into a long weekend, you're going to see a very slow last few hours of the day. So I closed out all my positions in the morning on Friday because it was a long weekend for the U.S. and I just felt like that little bit of strength was going to be there and then everyone was going to head for the hills and you'd get markets drifting lower or sideways for the rest of the day. And that's exactly what happened on most of the trades. So one of those little lessons to put in your trading book into a long weekend, do your trading in the first hour or two, and then head for the beach, the golf course, whatever you like to do. Well, that has been the Stock Scores Market Minutes. Hope you've enjoyed it. Subscribe to the channel. Hit the like button. If you have any questions, type them in the comments. I'll do my best to check on that. Most importantly, have a great week in the market and trade well.